Hey everyone. So let's talk about a theory that is, well, it's pretty out there. It's a theory that says reality isn't just a bunch of stuff happening according to fixed laws. Instead, it's a conscious thinking system that is literally writing its own rules as it goes. It's called the Cognitive-Theoretic Model of the Universe, or CTMU for short. And honestly, it might just change how you think about, well, everything. So let's just start with the core, mind-bending question here. We're all taught that the laws of physics are set in stone, right? They're unchanging. But what if they aren't? What if the universe isn't just some passive stage where events play out, but is actually an intelligent author, writing its own story in real time? All right, to even begin to wrap our heads around this, we're going to need a roadmap. So we'll start with the huge problem in physics that the CTMU is trying to solve. Then we'll look at the ideas that inspired it, break down its core concepts, and finally explore some of its most startling implications. Let's dive in. So, first things first, why would anyone even come up with a theory like the CTMU? Well, it turns out it's born from this really deep conflict right at the heart of modern science. You could even call it a crisis in how we describe reality itself. You see, for centuries, science has had this kind of split personality. On one hand, you've got classical physics, think Einstein's relativity, which describes reality as this smooth, continuous, unbroken thing. But on the other hand, you've got quantum physics, which tells us the world is made of these tiny, discrete packets, kind of like pixels on a screen. And here's the problem. These two pictures of reality just do not get along. They're fundamentally incompatible. It's like we have two different instruction manuals for the universe, written in two different languages, with no dictionary to translate between them. And the mathematician David Berlinski just hit the nail on the head with this. We can look at the physical it, a molecule of DNA, and we can see the informational bit, the genetic code it carries that basically builds a whole person. But how does a bunch of atoms create abstract information and meaning? That's the gap. That's the mystery that the CTMU is trying to solve. Okay, so to understand the CTMU's solution, we've got to go back a step and look at the work of this brilliant physicist, John Archibald Wheeler. Now, he didn't create the CTMU, but his ideas were so revolutionary that they basically laid all the groundwork, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the universe is fundamentally aware of itself. Wheeler's big idea was really powerful. He didn't see the universe as just some machine that was wound up and left to run. No, he pictured it as a self-excited circuit. Think of it like a system that powers itself up through its own continuous feedback loop. In his view, the universe is literally observing itself into existence. And this is his logic loop. Just think about it for a second. The laws of physics allow for observers, like you and me, to exist. Then, our acts of observation create information about the universe. And here's the kicker. Wheeler proposed that this very information is what gives rise to the laws of physics in the first place. It's a perfect self-creating circle. So observation isn't just a passive act of looking. It's a creative act. And this all boils down to Wheeler's famous phrase, it from bit. What he meant was that at the most fundamental level, reality isn't made of matter or energy. It's made of information. Every single physical thing, every it, is ultimately built from simple yes or no questions, or bits. The takeaway here is absolutely profound. Reality itself is informational. Okay, so with that foundation in place, now we can finally talk about the CTMU itself. It was developed by Christopher Langan, and what it does is take Wheeler's wild ideas and tries to build them into a complete, formal system. And it does it by proposing that reality isn't like a language, it is a language. The core concept has a bit of a mouthful of a name. It's called SCSPL, which stands for Self-Configuring, Self-Processing Language. But what it means is actually pretty intuitive. It means the universe is a language that contains its own grammar, writes its own sentences, and understands its own meaning. It doesn't need an outside programmer because it's both the software and the hardware, all wrapped up into one. And this idea, this self-processing language, is the proposed solution to that original crisis we talked about. All of a sudden, that gap between mind and matter, between information and the thing processing it, it just vanishes. In the CTMU, they're just two sides of the same coin, a single substance called infocognition. Put simply, reality is a thinking process, and thought is the very fabric of reality. So, if reality is a language, then it has to have rules, right? A kind of grammar. Well, the CTMU is built on three foundational principles. Principles that it claims are basically self-evident, that they have to be true by definition. Let's just quickly walk through them. First is mind equals reality. This just means that the logical rules that structure our thoughts are the exact same rules that structure the universe. The map is the territory. Second, you've got the metaphysical ontology principle. This is just a fancy way of saying reality is a closed loop. It contains its own instruction manual. It doesn't need anything outside of itself to exist. And finally, there's the multiplex unity principle. This is the idea that the entire universe is kind of reflected in each of its parts, and each part helps define the whole. It's what keeps the whole system from falling into chaos. All right, now we get to one of the most counterintuitive and frankly one of the wildest ideas to come out of this whole framework. The CTMU has a completely different take on cosmic expansion and the very nature of space-time itself. So we all know the standard view, right? The universe is expanding, like dots on a balloon that's being blown up. Well, the CTMU completely flips that script with a concept it calls conspansion. So imagine the total size of the universe is constant, it's fixed. Instead of space itself expanding, everything inside the universe, galaxies, atoms, even the rate that time flows, is constantly shrinking in proportion to the whole. Now, from our perspective, living inside it, that would look exactly like expansion. It's the same observation, but a totally different explanation. And here's the crazy part. This isn't just some philosophical sleight of hand. The math behind this conspansion idea naturally predicts that the expansion should be accelerating. And that's the exact same mysterious phenomenon that modern cosmology has had to invent the idea of dark energy to explain. The CTMU claims it doesn't need it. So, how does a universe like this decide which path to take? The mechanism in the CTMU is called telic recursion. Okay, try to imagine this. The universe can see all of its possible future timelines. It then, and this is the weird part, it reaches back from the future into the present and selects the path that will create the most meaning, the most coherence for itself. It's a feedback loop that works across time, constantly self-optimizing its own evolution towards some kind of purpose. Okay. I know that was a lot, so let's zoom out for a second. What's the big takeaway from all of this? What's the final picture that the CTMU is trying to paint of our universe? 1. That's really the key. The CTMU argues that everything, mind, matter, space, time, you, me, is all part of a single, unified, self-contained, and self-aware system. There's nothing outside of it. It is all one thing. So the ultimate conclusion of this theory is a really radical break from the mainstream scientific view. It basically replaces a universe governed by randomness and blind physical laws with a universe that is fundamentally intelligent, that is purposeful, and that is actively, consciously designing its own existence. And that really leaves us with one final and I think pretty profound question to think about. If we live in a universe that isn't just a cosmic accident, but is actually a system that is choosing its own path to maximize its own meaning, then what does that say about our role in it? What does that imply about our own purpose? That's something to chew on. Thanks for joining.